It is 7 o'clock in the evening on Tuesday, August 11th, 2020. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Colerain Township Board of Trustees to order. Mr. Baker, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Chabot.
Here.
Mr. Unger.
Here.
Mr. Waller.
Here. I'd ask that you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And as a meditation, there's a lot of things going on in our country right now, and a lot of people facing various hardships and difficult circumstance. And at the same time, I'd like to thank God for the many blessings He does give us, and hopefully things calm down a little bit and get back to more of an orderly life that we can have here. Thank you. Our next item is the fiscal office. Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Board. I would like to ask the Board to approve the minutes.
I'll motion to approve the minutes from July 20th, 2020 as provided.
I second it.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion?
None.
And Mr. Baker, I sent you one or two typos that I saw in it. Did you make those corrections?
I did.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Chabot.
Aye.
Mr. Unger.
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
And our next item is a presentation by Congressman Steve Chabot, but it's my understanding he is not here right now.
He is.
He is here.
This and is up on the screen. And Mr. Chabot, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Steve.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to be part of the meeting here this evening. I won't take a lot of time. I'll be relatively brief. I had the opportunity to have breakfast with Raj just last week at one of the really fine establishments in Colerain Township, at the Sweetheart Cafe, which I know is lots of folks in the area, outside the area for that matter, like to go there, and it was really great. Got to talk with the owner there, and Raj and I had a great conversation about a whole range of issues that Colerain Township is addressing. So we certainly would like to be of any assistance that we can be, myself and my staff as well. Colerain Township is a very important part of our community. One of the largest, as you know, one of the best townships, not only in our district, but the entire state as far as I'm concerned. And I've been blessed to have worked with a number of the township trustees over the years. Dan Unger and I have worked on things together. Raj, I just mentioned. Matt Wall invited me out earlier this year, right before the pandemic hit actually. We had an opportunity to have breakfast with the Colerain Chamber of Commerce at the Red Squirrel. And a very interesting discussion about, as I say, a whole bunch of things. We stopped by the police department and met with Police Chief Denny, later on the fire department, and met with Fire Chief Cook. We were able to present a flag to one of the officers, Chris Thomas, for heroism, and that was an honor to do that. We stopped by Dale Woods Way, and we went to the FEMA mitigation site, as well as Duke Energy's electricity operations center, and the proposed heroin task force site, and a number of other things too. So it was, we spent basically the whole day in Colerain Township taking in a lot of the important issues that you all are dealing with. One of the things that Raj and I talked about the other day, and Raj was kind enough to give me one of the Colerain Avenue corridor studies here, which I've been leafing through the past few days and discussing it with my staff, and we had met with some of the business owners along Colerain some months back as well, and so we certainly would like to work with and offering that help, any assistance that we can give in looking at potential funding from the federal level. We do have another the transportation bill that we'll be dealing with in the upcoming months. And so there is funding opportunities that are there that we're certainly willing and able to work with you all on. The thing that's important about that, to get it, you obviously have to have the folks working together, and so the business community and the governmental leaders. It's important that you all, hash out whatever issues there may be, because these grants and funding things are very competitive, and so the best chance to get access to federal money, make sure that everybody is working together within the community and that you've got that all ironed out. So, and we worked on the whole ring, beyond Colerain, obviously we worked on the Brent Spence Bridge, continue to work on that, the Western Hills Viaduct, and just all kinds of transportation areas. So we're basically to help in any way we can. One of the things that was really good to see is how many small businesses in Colerain Township have had the opportunity to take advantage of the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP program, that we passed in the CARES Act back in March. I happen to be the ranking member of the House Small Business Committee. I was the chairman for the last two Congresses, and we have a very good working relationship with the chair. She's a Democrat, I'm a Republican. So we work actually very closely together, and so we were able to get some things in there which really did benefit our community. If you look at the entire congressional district, which includes most of the city of Cincinnati, most of Hamilton County, and all of Warren County, our congressional district, of the 16 congressional districts in Ohio, we received the most funding. It was almost $3 billion. Small, when I say we, I mean small businesses. We retained more jobs, over 250,000 in our district, and more small businesses were helped, about 17,500 than any congressional district in Ohio. So because we were working together, and so it was good to see and visit some of the small businesses that did receive those grants, and we're now in the process of looking at, if Congress can get its act together, perhaps a second round of PPP, and maybe making some of it more flexible so that they'll overwhelmingly be forgiven for most small businesses. The whole goal was to allow these small businesses to survive beyond this pandemic. We've already made some adjustments. For example, you had to spend the money within 8 weeks in the first round. Well, we found out this pandemic is going to last longer than we thought. And so we extended that to 24 weeks. So it's the option of the small business owner, which makes more sense to them. Now, it's just an example of one modification that we made, and there were a number of others. So consider me a resource. Anything that we can do to help, please let me know. Give us a call. We have 3 offices, one in downtown Cincinnati and the 3 tower up on the 30th floor. Up in Warren County, we have one right down the street from the Golden Lamb, and of course our office in Washington, D.C. And I'm hoping that when we get beyond this pandemic, that you all will bring your families and school groups up. I always enjoy giving tours for folks who come to Washington from our area, and from Colerain Township too, of course. But right now, our principal focus is making sure that we get beyond this pandemic and save as many lives as we possibly can. Get the schools open, but do it safely. Make sure that that we're taking into consideration both the safety of the children, which is #1 priority, and the teachers as well. But we do need to get the schools open, in my view, but we have to do it safely. Same thing with the businesses. We want to get, we had a great economy, but once this pandemic hit, to slow the rate of growth, to flatten the curve, so to speak, social distancing, all the things that we've learned so much about lately, it was a tremendous impact, adverse impact of the economy. And so we're trying to make sure that these businesses can survive and as many Americans as possible as well. So anyway, I'll just I'll stop there and thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a few words here this evening, and let us know if we can be of any help, whatever it may be. And thank you all for representing the folks in Colerain Township, so well. You do a great job, and So thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for come and talk to me the other day in the Sweetheart Cafe. I know you got a very busy schedule, but you took time. You care about our community. You care about Colerain Township, and that's very commendable. And you know, with the federal government working together, ODOT, Tommy Arnold will be speaking to us after you, and we'll achieve great things for Colerain Township. Thank you very much for your help.
Thank you. Let me thank also Jeff Mill, who was very involved as well too. So thank you, Jeff.
My pleasure.
Congressman Matt Wallert, I just wanted to thank you for all the hard work you're doing in D.C. And just to express, I've talked to a number of small business owners. We started actually back for our in-services teaching this week, and the one kind of uniform theme that I get from people, probably more so than the spring, is that people really are, the uncertainty is scaring people. I know that small businesses, a lot of restaurants are in big trouble right now. So I know that, you know, you guys are doing everything you can up there, and I know through your committees you are as well, and I certainly appreciate that.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, good to see you. Thank you.
Okay, and that concludes the presentation by Steve Chabot. And the next item, Mr. Mills.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a presentation by Tommy Arnold. And let me cue up Tommy here. Okay. All right, Mr. Arnold, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mills. And can you see the screen that says ODOT updates?
Let me see here. Yep, there we go.
Okay, good deal. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here this evening. I was last with everybody in January of 2020, which feels like a long time ago now. Certainly 2020 is shaping up to be a lot different than we imagined back then. But fortunately, ODOT has been able to keep rolling with our core mission, as I know the township is too. And I just want to thank you again for the chance to be with you tonight and to be able to do it through the Teams setting. I wish we were there in person, of course, but still, I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. Over the years, ODOT and Colerain Township have worked very closely together, and I'm really excited to continue to collaborate on transportation projects and improve that benefit our shared customers. So not only ODOT's customers, but the township as well. We serve the same folks in our area and in our region. And one thing I wanted to tell you about quickly before I jump into my presentation is a new ODOT District 8 website. So this is just a District 8 site that I want to share with you. And Jeff, if you have the PowerPoint that can be shared with folks, all these links work in the PowerPoint. So, you know, feel free to email it out to anybody. They can click links in here and see and go to these sites. But every spring, ODOT puts together an update to our multi-year work plan, which highlights our operations work. So the work that Justin Kemp does out on the road with Hamilton County for the next 2 years, and then our capital projects for the next 6. And so this year we put together a website. It has a narrative document which provides a little bit of a write-up about all of our major programs. And then the really cool thing is it also has a map, an interactive map. So if you go to this site, click on the map, you can actually zoom in to any area you're interested in and learn more about projects that are underway. So like, for instance, if you want to learn about the sidewalk project that ODOT's developing on Colerain Avenue, you can zoom right in, click on it to see what year it's coming. And we've also added another map to this site that shows all the projects that are actively in construction. So these are brand new tools. We just unveiled them in July. So I wanted to share this with you now. So feel free to check them out. Okay, so then for tonight, I have really 2 main points. First, I want to give a quick safety project update. As we discussed back in January, there's several projects and studies planned for Colerain Avenue and for Colerain Township. So These both represent opportunities for us to work together, and I'll give you a quick update there. And then secondly, it's to talk about the plan that Congressman Chabot showed, which was the planning document for Colerain Avenue. Recently, I got the chance to attend a webinar on this type of intersection, which is called a restricted crossing U-turn or haircut. And I just had a couple updates I want to share with you. ODOT has these in place, of course, already on Bypass 4. And we're developing them up on Green 35, US 35 in Green County, West 15, well, and many other places across the state. So I want to share a couple updates there. So everything we do at ODOT is about improving safety. So our mantra is we're going towards 0 deaths. But unfortunately, got a long way to go. And even just as of Monday, the 10th, August 10th, 676 people have tragically lost their lives on Ohio roads this year. And that's remarkable because at the end of July, statewide travel was down about 14% so far compared to last year, but traffic deaths were actually up 4%. And unfortunately, July was actually the worst month for traffic deaths in 10 years. I mean, it's really remarkable, and things are going the wrong way. But ODOT continues to monitor that situation and try to make improvements proactively at our high crash locations. And just as an example, in the last 18 months, there's been at least 8 fatal or serious crashes on US 27 in Colerain Township. So there's certainly room for improvement. Earlier this year, when I was with you, I talked about the passing of the motor fuel tax. At that time, the governor placed a high emphasis on safety and directed ODOT to address our top 150 intersections across the state. And there are 3 on Colerain Avenue that we started to tackle. The first was US 27 in Struble. We recently converted the left turns to protected only at that intersection. So if you've been through there, hopefully you've noticed that things are a little different. Secondly, at the intersection of US 27 and Round Top, we have a project where we're going to replace that signal and add back plates. That project is slated for 2022. So we are actively working on that project. We also did a study of US 27 and Redskin, which really looked at 27 all the way from Springdale to 275. We looked at adding a 3rd lane with that project, but decided not to proceed with that concept at this time. Instead, we're focusing on a traffic operations project that's under construction right now as well. It's a $440,000 project that's upgrading all of the computer software that operates the traffic signal system on Colerain. And it's actually a pilot project for the state. It's the first system that we've implemented like this, and it's a very smart technology that's constantly monitoring traffic volumes and signal timing plans, and it makes suggestions for tweaking and improving the timing regularly. So it's a really exciting new software that's being put in right now. And then there are also 2 sidewalk projects under construction, or under development, I should say. In the spring of 2021, we'll be adding sidewalk from Banning to Burnside, as well as a crossing north of Banning. And then there's a project to add sidewalk as well that Colerain Township was successful in getting funding for from OKI. And that project is slated in 2023-24 to add sidewalk from John Rose to Shady Crest and on Pippin as well. So there's a lot of great projects in the works, not to mention the recent project that was recently awarded near the school. So every year we also rank high crash locations and we complete studies at those. Unfortunately, there seems to be at least one segment or intersection on 27 every year. So right now, we recently completed a study of 27 and 275. And just like we did at Struble, we're going to look at making the left turns from northbound 27 onto 275 westbound, either protected only, or we may try the flashing yellow arrow. We are currently piloting that as well. That's another first for the state, and it's being done in District 8 on 747 in Butler County. We're monitoring that and seeing how the flashing yellow arrow is working for us. If we have success, we may consider that instead of the protected only. And the second location was on 27 from Galbraith to Bower Woods. Galbraith itself actually was ranked number 15 among suburban intersections in the most current rankings. So that intersection continues to be a high priority for the state. Real quick, Jeff, can you still hear me? Because I can't hear you guys. There was an echo before, but maybe you muted yourself.
Yes, sir. I muted it so that that echo would go away. Thanks, Jamie or Jackie and Jeff.
Good deal. Thank you for doing that. Just want to make sure I was still talking, having a conversation with you instead of just at my computer. So next are the next steps for Colerain Avenue. ODOT, obviously, we want to continue to work with the township on the planning study and, working on including the vision the township has with any improvements that we want to pursue. But recently, as I mentioned before, I got the chance to attend a webinar that had some updated information I wanted to share with you that was pretty interesting and I thought was certainly pertinent to your vision for Colerain. The first is something that's been on our radar for a long time, and that is that this type of intersection, which again is called an R-cut, is one of FHWA's proven safety countermeasures. And in fact, FHWA has synthesized all the different research that's been done across the country and determined that the R-cut has a greater than 50% reduction in injury and fatal crash. That's a big number. And if you look at the picture there, that example, that's actually a Michigan U-turn that's shown there because there's no lefts in the middle. But that street doesn't look too far away from Colerain. I mean, it looks like a suburban arterial that's alive with businesses and traffic volume. So it's just that picture, reminds us that I think it's certainly worth looking at for the Colerain Avenue corridor. But the second thing that's a little bit more surprising is that there are dramatically fewer conflict points for pedestrians. So, at a regular intersection, there's 24 different conflict points where a pedestrian can be struck. And with the R-cut, there's actually only 10. So that's a great benefit. And that even includes the U-turns, as you can see on either side of the intersection. So that's a great benefit safety-wise for pedestrians on the corridor, which has been a priority for ODOT and the township. So that's a little bit unexpected feature of the R-cut. There is a great video. I'm certainly not going to play it right now because I don't want to take that kind of technology gamble. But this is a nice video if you want to watch it. This corridor that they highlight has some similarities to Colerain and some differences. I mean, it looks a little bit more like Bypass 4 in that there's not many driveways, but it does have a similar amount of traffic volume on it. There's about 28 to 42,000 depending on where you are in that corridor, whereas Colerain has 35 to 45,000 in the area. So we're in the ballpark. And this video highlights that they really had a great success in North Carolina when they implemented the R-cuts. In fact, they were able to handle a huge expansion and redevelopment with the R-cut and almost no noticeable change in traffic, even though they had a lot of development that occurred over time. So it's a good success story. So talking about next steps, Congressman Chabot mentioned funding opportunities with the transportation bill. Obviously, ODOT is watching the next infrastructure bill and excited for opportunities that may come with that. But there are also some opportunities available to us now. I'll start off by saying, the R-cut, it's not a slam dunk. There's a lot of traffic analysis that's needed to evaluate how the U-turns will work. We're not necessarily pushing this. We need to be, ODOT and the township need to work together on this concept. And knowing that the township supports the idea certainly would make ODOT more interested in pursuing it because we want to make sure we're serving our shared customers along Colerain. Secondly, if ODOT unfortunately doesn't have the capacity to do this analysis in detail, but there are opportunities for us to ask for consultant assistance. Our central office has a number of consultant task orders available. And if there's a desire from the township, then we can work together and ask for help to basically do that additional analysis. So what I would ask the township to think about, you don't necessarily have to give me feedback today, but Jeff and I can circle back later, is really two questions. One, is there a section on 27 where the township would really like to focus upon? Galbraith is one location because it's ranked highly and there's a long stretch on either side of Galbraith where there's not really a lot of signals. Maybe that's a good spot to try. Or maybe of a development that's coming and you want to coordinate that with planning efforts. I'm really interested in what the township's thoughts are, because honestly, we both want this to work if we're going to pilot it. So, there's a lot of factors that could go into picking where we would do that analysis or that pilot. And then secondly, would we like to just analyze that one section, or do we want to look at a longer corridor like Struble all the way to Galbraith, or Struble south through Galbraith and beyond? Those are the two questions I'd like you to think about. I'd like the township to think about and share your feedback with ODOT. That would be very helpful. Moving forward, we can ask for help from the consultants, assistants anytime throughout the year. But if we want to actually apply for funding to build the project or start acquiring right of way, we would need to go through the two formal rounds, which one's coming up in September of 2020, and then the next is April of 21. So fortunately, we have two opportunities every year. So if we miss September, April is right around the corner to jump on it. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this type of intersection, give you a few updates, and I'll gladly answer any questions or stick around for a conversation, or Jeff and I can follow up afterwards.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. I'm Dan Unger. Can you hear me okay? Jeff Mills is going to reestablish the contact with Mr. Arnold. But anyway, what my comments are on the presentation is the R-Cut. I'd really want to make sure that any I think Mr. Weckbach's on his way in to help you. On the R-Cut, I really want to make sure that any truck or delivery traffic could get through that, and that's why I'm not so much interested in that south of Galbraith Road at this time. And we did have a comment from Jim Acton, who wanted to know about the Colerain Township lettering that is on the fence that is on the Colerain Avenue overpass over 275. And one of the things I'll follow up with Mr. Arnold on is at the new Duke Operations Center, which I believe is the apron is lined up across the street from Harry Lee Lane. Do you have him back?
Yes. Mr. Unger, Tommy Unger was asking about
Just
warrant study at Harry Lee.
Can you hear me okay, Mr. Arnold?
Okay.
Hi,
I'll have to look into that one. To be honest, I'm not sure exactly where that one personally stands, but I can follow up and see where that analysis is.
And then another comment would be on the R-Cuts. How accessible are those to semi trucks and long delivery trucks? We certainly want to make sure that all of our businesses are able to be served by full length delivery vehicles, namely semis and other trucks, because without trucks, the business can't happen. And that's my comment on the R-Cuts. But I did receive an email from Jim Acton, and as you're familiar with it, the fencing over the overpass, the Colerain Avenue overpass over 275, there's some nice letters on there that say Colerain Township. And the paint has faded off of those. And I think Jeff Mills looked into it a year or two ago, and it's ridiculously expensive for us to have traffic control and send somebody up there to take those letters down and redo them. I remember last year one day, ODOT had a crack sealing project out on 275, and had we known that ODOT had traffic control set up, that might have been an easier time to get those letters taken down where we could share expenses. So if you have any maintenance planned for I-275 through Colerain Township anytime soon, please let us know, and I'd like to somehow see if we can coordinate that project. And that is if ODOT wants to pay to do it themselves, we would certainly welcome that. But I'm not sure that you want to do that. But if you do, we're happy with it. And if you don't, I'd like to coordinate the next time you have lanes of 275 shut down for maintenance, just so we could get up there for a few hours and get those letters down. I think at the time we even got a price for a company that had a bucket truck to go do it. So. I've got your phone number, so I might follow up with you in the next couple days out at your office. So thank you for your,
Sounds good.
thank you for your presentation. Did Raj or Matt have any comments?
Yes, Tommy, I really want to thank you for all the stuff, all the things you do for Colerain Township. First time I met you at your office, there was the US 27 Colerain and Struble, and talked about an accident, the motorcycle. You really took care of it within 2 weeks. And now I contacted you again about the sidewalk on the Northwest High School, and it's also, you really helped us get the that sidewalk from the school to the Struble Road, the safety grant money. It's all these things you do for the township. We really appreciate very much. And like as you mentioned earlier, Steve Chabot's also very excited to work with us on the Colerain Avenue. And days ahead, I'd like to see yourself and Steve Chabot meet, and we'll think about how we can improve the Colerain Avenue. I'm looking forward. Then again, I want to thank you very much for all the things you do for Colerain Township.
Tommy, Matt Wallert, thanks again for the presentation, and I do appreciate that you bring us the cutting edge. I think I know these as Michigan lefts. Typically, the R-cut, is that about the same thing?
Tommy, the question was, is a R-cut and a Michigan left the same thing?
They are similar, but they're different iterations. So with the Michigan left, typically there's no left turn at all at the middle intersection. So at the main intersection, everybody's just going through and right. And then you have to go down the street a little bit, make a U-turn to come back. With an R-cut, typically we still allow left turns at the main intersection on the main street. So, that's an interesting ability we have. We can kind of customize it to the traffic volume. So like, let's say Galbraith and Colerain, where certainly Galbraith is a major road too. Maybe we don't want to make all of Galbraith make a right turn if they're going through. Maybe if we look at something different as an example, whereas if you're looking up the street at another location that's a much more of a minor road, you would maybe go ahead and make them turn right and keep Colerain flowing like normal. So there's a lot of opportunities there, and that's where you really dig into the numbers.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it, and it's kind of difficult for me sometimes to visualize this with the traffic, but I agree with Mr. Unger. I think it's important that we keep access from trucks, but at the same time, if this is an opportunity to keep that access and reduce injury and crashes or certainly accidents, I certainly like to do so. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arnold.
Thanks, Tommy.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Yep. Bye.
And the next item, Mr. Mills.
Yes, sir. The next item is a proclamation recognizing New Foundation Savings Bank for 130 years of service. And
I have it here if you'd like me to read it.
very good.
Proclamation recognizing New Foundation Savings Bank for 130 years of operation. Hamilton County, Ohio, be it proclaimed by the Township Trustees of Colerain Township that, whereas New Foundation Savings Bank, the third smallest bank in Ohio, was established in 1890, predating many modern banking devices and the FDIC, and whereas New Foundation Savings Bank has been a stalwart member of the Colerain Township business community and is located on Clara Avenue off of Galbraith Road in the Groesbeck neighborhood, and whereas New Foundation Savings Bank is a major sponsor to a variety of community activities and groups throughout Colerain Township, and whereas 2020 marks the 130th anniversary of operation by New Foundation Savings Bank, and whereas we thank New Foundation Savings Bank for their passion and commitment to serving the community and congratulate them on their 130th anniversary. Be it proclaimed that the Colerain Township Board of Trustees does hereby recognize August 20th, 2020 as New Foundation Savings Bank Day in Colerain Township. And I'd ask for a motion to adopt this proclamation.
Motion to adopt.
I second it.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yes, congrats to New Foundation Savings Bank, and I had to look there at the 1890 date, being the history nerd that I am. That was the date of one of the biggest financial panics in United States history. I find it interesting, the timing of starting in the middle of a panic, which, by the way, was, if anyone cares, which I doubt.
It was a gold panic, wasn't it?
And it was caused by a bank in England with overextending investments to Argentina, and it spread to Brazil. Just a little FYI in case you ever get an 1890 panic question, but I think it was one of the largest declines of the stock market in the United States history during that year. But that shows that shows kind of a spunkiness to start in the middle of the panic, and here we are in I guess a recession or with a pandemic, and congratulations. You've seen a lot. Great Depression, World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War. It's just, talk about an institution that's weathered the storm. Congrats.
Any comments, Raj?
That's amazing. Small bank like this survived, and especially in our township. So proud of the bank.
And congratulations to New Foundation Savings Bank. Mr. Baker, would you please call for a vote?
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
And August 20th, 2020 will be New Foundation Savings Bank Day in Colerain Township.
Awesome.
The next item, I'll get you to sign that, and we'll get Raj to sign it, and we'll get that to them. The next item is Citizens Address. I believe we have one person outside that wanted to address the board.
Yes, sir. Mr. Miller.
Yeah, Chief Jeff is bringing.
And here he comes now. Hello, Keith.
Hello, Mr. Miller.
We're doing fine. You can, if you wish, you're certainly socially distant from the rest of us. If you want to pull your mask down, it'll pick up better on the microphone.
Let the air out. So it's talking about that project down there on Colerain there. How about the little Duke property that was the hotel and the bar? How come that's sitting there fenced off separate? Duke fenced it off completely separate from their property because they didn't want the property in the first place. So is that property sitting there waiting to be resold to the state of Ohio for the U-turn lane? And
Is it to north or south of the apron where you get into Duke?
it's south.
Towards Cincinnati, and there's
Right.
Is it an employee parking lot?
It's fenced off completely separate from everything.
I haven't,
It's not fenced off with Duke. It's not fenced off from the road. It's fenced off from the road and it's fenced off from Duke. You know, there's like 3 fences there separating it. See, I still believe the property was stolen down there. They stole the hotel property from Sandy because they want to be the ones selling it to the state of Ohio. They didn't want her to get that money because the hotel would win anyway, because they're going to say it's for the betterment and we're going to put a road there, so we're going to take it anyway. So, you know, did they take that property just because they didn't want Sandy to make that money? I mean, that's what it looks like, because it's fenced off separately. We got 22 hours of Jethro over there into this. So that's about, I figured out what we got buying the hotel, tearing it down and all that, and what we lost on the tavern. We got about $690,000 wrapped up into that property. It's sitting there fenced off separate, waiting for something. And who owns that property? Anybody know? Who owns it?
Duke.
Duke owns, so Duke's paying taxes on that property then. Because I just want to make sure I'm just sitting there waiting as township property and nobody's paying taxes on it because it's sitting there waiting to be resold.
so you're saying it's fenced off on all 4 sides without even a gate to get into it?
No, it's fenced off. I didn't see no gate getting into it.
I've been meaning to stop down there and have a look since I think they just started operations Monday, August 3rd, so I'll stop down and have a look at it.
Their entry, please.
We'll go and look into it. I'll go and look into it.
Okay, But you know, Duke, their road isn't straight across from John, what is it, Harry Lee?
Harry Lee.
They're down north, they're north of that.
Like I was saying earlier, I might have to go down and look at the alignment of that apron.
That property's sitting there fenced off for what reasons? What I'm still trying to figure out. We don't know that Duke didn't want the property in the first place, so who did? And like I said, I believe it was stolen from Sandy because it's going to be resold to the state, and they didn't want her to make that money. They wanted to make that money themselves, so they used this building legally to steal it. And that's always going to be my opinion. I mean, it's a shame that, you know, Sandy got screwed like that. I mean, because she owned the property, and Jeff over there basically screwed her out. You know, he negotiated 22 months, actually, he said. He had it on that project. You know, because the woman that owns the property had a land contract, and you know that. You told me that the night of that meeting, even. Before the meeting would start, you said that.
I was
You know,
actually
Sandy had a
surprised.
good land contract.
I learned that the same moment you did when that Sandy showed up. She was not the owner of record of the property.
On,
The other person was the owner of record, and that's who
right.
Jeff was
But she
dealing
was
with, was the owner. I would not have any way of knowing that. I can only look at the auditor.
Started.
I can only look at the auditor's site and see who owns something.
I know that, but you know, you told me and my neighbor outside the room before the meeting that night that you hoped Sandy had a good land contract. So you tell me you didn't know? When you said it before the meeting even started.
I would not, I did
What do
not.
they call that? Sunshine Act? Was that
Keith,
violated?
hey, Keith, I did not know that until that lady stood up at this meeting. I had never heard of her. What you're saying and what the facts are two different things, so.
Oh, what I'm saying is fact. Me and my neighbor was out in the hall. You was out in the hall. Sandy was not there. Sandy had not spoken yet. And you said that
I would not have known.
before
I
the meeting was even
never
started.
saw her till she walked in the room.
Right. And you
And
said that
she stood up and
outside
spoke.
the corridor before the meeting even
I
started.
I
You
think you're,
violated the Sunshine Act.
that's crazy talk, Keith.
Okay. Let's talk, let's see, I had 3 subjects here. Got me on that one pretty good.
Thank you.
But that, you know, how about the Lake Gloria property? Have you zone changed that yet?
Yes.
Yes.
What about the people across the street, you know? The lake needs to go. There's no place for the water to go already. And you're gonna put out that much more blacktop and concrete in there? Where's the water gonna go? That's a hole right there. It's just gonna fill up all that new sidewalk. It's gonna be underwater. Because that's a bad area. The poor woman across the street gets flooded out. But yet we're worried about, I don't know, selling zoning. I don't know what goes on in this building anymore. Everything seems to be crooked. But I mean, come on, we done changed that zoning. We got sidewalk for them. How about the people between Kemper and Northwest High School that lived there before the school? They didn't get sidewalk. We're getting sidewalk already for the Lake Gloria property is what it looks like to me. Because I believe everything north of Sewell right there, isn't that bust?
I don't think the high school has busing.
Not at all?
I don't believe the Northwest High School has bus service. And that sidewalk would allow a student from Northwest High School to walk south and not in the street.
That's the one we got a grant.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I was told about the grant a couple meetings ago. But you know, I gotta pay a grant because Rumpke's got sidewalk up there by his building, and which that money should have went for $4 million. And now we gotta pay for a grant too. I mean, it seems like, you know, we're nickel diming all us to death out here. I'm paying $10 more for license. I realize it's only $5, but that's twice now we've been $5 for license. And the funny thing is, we get road work for 1 year and then it quits. So I'm still paying the $5, so how come the road work quits? Everybody's still paying the $5, but we get 1 year road work and then it's done. But we're all still paying the $5. Now we're all gonna be paying $10. Are we gonna get more road work than 1 year's worth? I mean, come on. I'm tired of being nickel and dimed. Now I'm at this age now where I'm on the back 9, you know? Nobody cared about the Rumpke expansion. I mean, I was so disappointing there, you know. I'm upset with my neighbors, you know. I really am, because they don't care. I look at the future of this township. You better look at it. Northbrook's going to start as tear downs, and they're going to start stacking you in there 5 deep in apartments. Northbrook's going to be tore down and changed, because this neighborhood's going to become the project because of Rumpke. Because that's disgraceful, and they don't care about the people that's going to live out here by the dump. And you know, I mean, it's just so damn. It's just old, same thing. Been coming to this building about 7 years. 7 years now. When I first started coming here, Rehire was still here. You know Brink?
Frank Birkenhauer.
Yeah. Well, he's over in there. See, that's something else. You got that property, you got Walt's Barbecue, you got the old Perkins, and you got the Frisch's. Now, Frisch's is the only one in Colerain Township.
I think it's in Green.
No, I believe it divides right there, don't it?
It's down by Burnside.
Frisch's is in Green?
Yeah, Frisch's and, no, but the
Mount Airy.
Well,
see, that's all, you know, the U-turn lane's coming. 2026, it's already been signed. I don't know who signed it, but it's already a done deal. So anything going on here is just a little dog and pony show, as usual.
that would certainly be news to me if something like that had been signed.
It's
So,
going through. It's already been a done deal. It's already been talked about. It's a done deal. U-turn lane's coming, and that's what Sandy's Hotel was taken for by whoever's running this room. And we'll see who, we'll figure out who's going to sell that property, because they're waiting to sell it for a profit, because the state of Ohio, they stole it from Sandy. Because Sandy did have a land contract. And, you know, it should have been hers till, they're going to take, like I said, they're going to take it anyway. What do they call it, domains? They're going to take us, they're going to put a U-turn lane there. So Sandy was going to lose the hotel no matter what. Just as she's going to have 6 more years of it. So, but they was going to take the hotel no matter what. But she would have been the one getting the money, and not whoever's manipulating this room. And this room is being manipulated. And I don't know, I'm tired, getting old. Luckily, well, I'll still be paying for the grants when I die. So, you know, I'll still be paying the money for the lies and the crimes. While the man goes home to Kentucky and the swamps take care of him. All right, I'm going to call that an evening then
thank you, Keith.
and head home.
Your mic on, Raj.
We'll see you.
Thank you. Thank you, Keith. We did get a few by email, and I'll go ahead and read the first one. It's from Stephanie Wright, directed to Jeff Mills about the vacant building maintenance license application form. Citizens address comments for trustee meeting on August 11th, 2020 from Stephanie Wright. Trustees, please accept the proposed resolution presented by trustee Matt Wallert tonight regarding the maintenance code. As you all well know, this has been something that's been on my radar for many years. Vacant commercial property within our township is out of control. As you drive up and down Colerain Avenue, Pippin and Galbraith, along with other major roads within our township, you can't help but to see all the vacant property. The township's CSR system is loaded with complaints about trash and litter. Our community continues to decline with vacant, blighted, and now dumping grounds for commercial and residential property. The list is long and the pictures are real. Please see the attached pictures. Our township is really in trouble. Currently, there is a resolution on the books for Colerain Township that protects our community against vacant property. In addition to this resolution, there is also a vacant building maintenance license agreement, which is attached to this email. Do you know how many businesses have registered with this license agreement since its inception in 2013 and the recent update in 2016? 1. Yes, 1. How can that possibly be? And better yet, why? This registration was just received in July 2020. Where are all the others? Question mark. My question is why hasn't then been enforced? I think she meant this. My question is why hasn't this been enforced? And when will the township get serious about this problem? As a resident of Colerain Township, please do something before it's too late. Life is good, Stephanie Wright. And included with Stephanie's email are some pictures. It looks like a picture of a mattress, a picture of some trash scattered on a property. Some of this is down at the vacant Kroger store down towards Mount Airy. There's some bales of cardboard that were not picked up by the cardboard recycling company. And there's a Republic Company dumpster down there that it looks like some other folks, that doesn't look like trash from the store, but it looks like there's a speaker, some tables, and other things dumped there. And then there are two other dumpsters, Rumpke dumpsters, that have the lids closed. The other one is from, I think that's Republic Services, if we could give them a call and ask them to empty their dumpster. And some of this didn't size right. There's the vacant building maintenance code that Stephanie has attached to this. And just the pictures of the mattress. And that's what there is. So that would be the comments from Stephanie Wright. The next citizen address is from Kathy Moore. And it is sent to Raj and Matt, but it doesn't appear that I was copied on it, so this is the first I've seen of it. But it was sent to the other two trustees and then not this trustee. August 11th, 2020 meeting topics from Kathy Moore. Please read my comments and answer any questions. When the board approved a recent vacation dump-in, I noticed the employee who retired in 2017 and was rehired immediately is getting the highest accrual rate. Why is that? With 3 years of service, employees should not get 7 hours vacation per pay period. Employees should be at the bottom of the accrual scale, not the top. I thought the board did away with dump-ins and was using the per pay period accrual. Next paragraph. When the township changes the duties of an employee, is the job description updated? Were those changes in status approved by the board? Is there a change of status reclassification in the employment file? Where would I find those changed job descriptions? Next paragraph. When pay increases were given this year, I noticed the property room manager position was not listed for any employee. This employee, who was the property room manager, was hired in January 2016 as a part-time clerk at $12.18 an hour. In January of 2017, the increase was to $12.33 an hour. In January 2018, the employee was given a full-time records clerk position at $12.70 an hour. August 2018, reclassified to property room manager, also working the impound lot, at $16 an hour. January 2020 was given an 11.75% increase given to all record clerks, which brought this employee to $17.88. What position does this employee hold? The impound lot, the records clerk, the property room manager, or all of the above? Next paragraph. Why did Mr. Mills not tell the board at the recent Colerain Community Improvement Corporation meeting that applications received for position on the CIC were received in February and say there was no deadline? There was a deadline, see the attached circle post, and those applications should have been forwarded to the board at that time. The board should only be the voting members. All employees appointed by Mr. Mills, and including Mr. Mills, do not live in the township. This should be a board decision only. The board should also allow 1 to 3 residents on the board, mostly for the sake of transparency. It appears, as in many instances, the board is not informed on what Mr. Mills is doing, or in this case, not doing. You, as elected officials, are responsible. What is the status of the FAC and the NGM contract? And that's the conclusion of Kathy's remarks, if you want to comment on those during your administrative report, Jeff. And then we have an email from Julie Deckert. To whom it may concern, I'm writing you about the Walgreens property at Colerain and Galbraith. It has become a dumping ground and looks disgusting. This is unsightly for us employees and our customers, as well as the same for all other local businesses directly in the area. I'm hoping you have some connections to Walgreens or whoever may own the property that they can get this cleaned up and resolved. Thank you for your help in advance. Signed, Julie Deckert. So we'll have to look into that Walgreens. I don't know if we have any complaints off of that or.
I'm not sure. We'd have to, anybody can look it up on the CSR.
It's yellow tagged, I think.
It's yellow tagged, yeah. So if you go to our website, colerain.org, and you click on the service request button, there's a map, and if you zoom into the property, you can see whether or not there's an active case.
And that's the conclusion of the citizens' comments that I have, along with the comment from Mr. Acton that I asked Tommy Arnold from ODOT about with the lettering. And I can only say to anyone watching this, thank you to the 99.99% of you that use the trash service that we have here in Colerain Township. Please stop dumping stuff in parking lots. Thank you. And we'll move on to the next part of the meeting, which is
Administrative reports.
administrative reports. Mr. Mills.
Yes, good evening, board. We'll begin our administrative reports with, let's see, Mr. Iona in the Planning Department.
Can you sign that?
Mr. Iona?
Am I on?
There you go.
All right, yes, there I am. Okay.
Hello, Mike.
Actually, not first. Okay, yes, good evening, board members. Mike Iona here to deliver the report for the planning department. Permits are up. It's surprising in the middle of an epidemic that permits are up, but it has been a banner year in 2020. And we may be shooting for the highest year for permits since we've been keeping records. As far as the BZA, we've only had 7 this year. And that, I think, is really a part of our proactive process to get the right applications through the process, and then the applications that, probably wouldn't make it through the process, we would try to weed those out to save staff time as well as the applicant money. As it pertains to violations, violations are up. It's no surprise. We've got over 1,000 violations to date, and staff is working hard. We recently have hired our new code specialist. She is getting her feet wet, and she, as of this week, she is ready to kind of go and take control of the Grossbeck beat. And we have high hopes for the rollout of our new system. So I look forward to continuing to report positive things on the code enforcement side. As it pertains to abatements, abatements are down this year for our grass. It seems like some of the larger property owners in the township have gotten the message that it doesn't pay to not cut your grass. In fact, it costs a lot if you don't cut your grass. So a lot of the repeat offenders that we've had over the past couple of years have really come into compliance this year. I think that's also in part to some of the relationships that we've built with some of these larger property owners. So we haven't had as many grass complaints this year, and we haven't therefore had as many grass abatements. As it pertains to housing court referrals, so we do have a lot of housing court referrals currently in our backlog. The COVID-19 epidemic has created that backlog due to the inability to hold housing court. But we have gotten pretty good results over the past few months by sending out final notices to property owners that have gone to that civil status in the process. So, we're going to continue to work the housing court system, and hopefully that'll yield positive results. I do want to mention one thing before I close on our numbers. We are working on the Walgreens. So during the citizens address, there was mention of the Walgreens property. We are aware that the property doesn't look good, and it's not in compliance with our property maintenance codes. Staff has been working over the past 3 weeks to figure out the best route or find the right contact for that property owner to bring it into compliance. Again, we've had over 1,000 complaints this year with 3 people, so it is a lot to handle. But again, we're using our best practices, and we're we're implementing the new system based on numbers, and we should be able to get our hands around it and again, achieve compliance on these properties. So that's my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hi, Mike. One of the other citizens' address items was the status of the Lake Gloria property and the zone change. Do you have an update handy on that? What's going on with Lake Gloria?
So Lake Gloria has been approved by the Board of Trustees as a preliminary development plan. The next steps in the process is for the applicant to go through that final development plan process. We have taken all of the feedback that we've gotten from the board, as well as through residents, through that preliminary development plan process. We've sent that over to the applicant. They're aware of that. They're reaching out to, all the different stakeholders and organizations involved in that review process, like Hamilton County Soil and Water, Metropolitan Sewer District, Cincinnati Waterworks, and they're finalizing their plan based on the conditions that you all set forth in the resolution that you adopted when you approved the preliminary development plan. And the last time I had talked to them, their goal was to be done with the permitting in 2020 and then move towards the construction phase of the project in 2021. So they haven't submitted anything yet for a final development plan, but again, at the last touch, they were getting their ducks in a row with the different stakeholders involved in the development review process.
And the situation with the Metropolitan Sewer District and the stormwater issue that may be over there, those are existing before the developer ever set foot on the property, and it's up to the developer to work that out with MSD and with Hamilton County Stormwater. Is my understanding of that correct? That's not us?
Well, yes, that is correct. So the Board of Trustees really doesn't, we don't have a sewer department. We don't have a Colerain Township sewer department. Metropolitan Sewer District provides our sewerage services. If there is an existing sewer problem on properties off-site, that's an existing problem in the Metropolitan Sewer District system. And that's something that should be addressed through them. I think for us to hold up a development on an existing situation in the Metropolitan Sewer District that's off-site just is not it wouldn't be good practice because, the site really probably doesn't have anything to do, with those issues. So, again, that is something that is reviewed through Metropolitan Sewer District, and the developer is working with them to be in compliance with their regulations prior to submitting the final development plan.
Great. And if you saw our citizen who showed up, made a comment about that, and I just wanted to emphasize that is not Colerain Township. That is the Metropolitan Sewer District, which is who through my water bill, that's who I pay for sewer service also. It's not the township, it's Metropolitan Sewer District. Thank you, Mike. Any of the other trustees have any comments?
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. Jeff, do you want to scroll to the top there? Sorry, I got ahead of myself. I was going on the list that's on the side of the screen there. Where are we going to start? Fire? All right, Chief Cook will give a presentation on fire.
Good evening, Board.
Evening, Chief.
This is safe to say this will be the last emergency activity report that I will be presenting to you tonight. But anyway, the emergency incident activity for July, there were 764 emergency medical incidents and 182 fire incidents and service calls in the township. We responded 29 times into the Pleasant Run Farms area of Springfield Township for emergency medical incidents. And it's with pleasure that I say there were no significant fire incidents or technical rescue incidents during the month. So, but the reported fire loss was approximately $5,767. So none of them significant. Our average response time for arrival of the first unit was 5 minutes and 18 seconds. And our first unit on scene, less than 6 minutes. was 72.3% of the time. Any questions from the board, fire department this evening?
Great job, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chief. Next, we have the Police Department and Police Chief Mark Denny.
Good evening, everybody. The July police activity report, we had 3,859 calls for service. That puts us to about 24,000 for the year, and pacing to be about 35, 40,000, which is an increase over last year. Our average response to all calls, when we look at all calls, we take report calls and emergency calls together. It was 11.7 minutes, and that's risen since April. But also, we've answered an additional 1,000 calls since April as well. So that has something to do with why the response times are increasing. The officers made 116 traffic stops and made 6 DUI arrests in July. Question was asked about Jake Spears and his duties. He is indeed the property room manager. He is also the impound lot manager, and he does serve as a records clerk, so he does all 3 of those jobs. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Chief. Next, we have Jackie O'Connell, Director of Public Services. And she did not have a report today. So I believe that wraps up our administrative reports. I will share that we had a great conversation today. It was a 2-hour-long conversation about the 2 major sidewalk projects that are kicking off here in Colerain Township. One that goes from Struble to Stout on Pippin and connects to Northwest High School. That project is set to kick off for construction in, don't hold your breath, 2024. So we are 4 years out before construction, but the design team is working. The environmental team is going to be working. They're the engineering team is working. They're going to be figuring out whether right-of-way needs to be acquired, et cetera. There's a lot of work that goes into these projects. But again, that's a 100% funded project from ODOT. There's no local match, which is fantastic. The other big sidewalk project that we talked about today was the Colerain Avenue from John Rose to Shady Crest. That project is set right now for construction in 2023. That's a $1.4 million project, and our local match will be coming from the Duke TIF, so no money out of the general fund or any of our operating funds to get that thing off the ground. 2023 is when that is set for construction. And that is my report.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Just a couple quick follow-ups. One you followed up by email, but have we heard back from ODOT about the 275 and volunteers?
We have not. So
We did, but then it was a follow-up.
yeah, so I spoke with Bree Hetzel and Tommy Arnold separately. Both of them said they were going to get with somebody in permits to find out what the process was. I think what you were trying to ascertain was whether or not we could put together a group of volunteers to do some vegetation removal at that intersection, make it look nicer, and then maybe even have that group of volunteers be the ones that plant the plants that were identified in the KZF design. And so we're working hard to get those answers, but have not gotten them back from ODOT.
And I had another one that just slipped my mind. It'll come to me. I'll do my report. Thanks.
Sure.
And then there was, and it looks like this just came at 11:50 this morning, and it was sent to Raj and Matt and not me. But some of the questions that Kathy Moore had, will you be able to address those?
Sure. Let me take a look here.
And I would once again ask, please, whoever's sending stuff, don't send it to only 2 trustees. I think it's better to send it to 1, but don't send it to 2 and not a 3rd one. I don't know if we're trying to orchestrate a meeting that way or what, but it doesn't appear that I was copied on that email.
Okay, so, yeah, and so the person that, the 2 people that Ms. Moore are speaking to are related, and I don't know if there's some kind of beef with the Spears family. I know the Spears family to be a very nice family, a group of people that work hard for the township, and I'm glad that we have them on the team. In 2017, Nancy Spears was rehired. At that time, the board did not have a retire-rehire policy. Since that time, we have instituted a retire-rehire policy. So any rehire conversation would have to be in accordance with the policies that are on the book now. I thought the board did away with dump-ins and was using a per pay accrual. That policy change was just made. So, yep, as we move forward, this is the policy book that governs how we manage now.
That
I
was
think
that
the
one
dump-in's referring to the dump-in that, for instance, we're doing tonight, to catch up, the catch-up dump-in.
Oh, yeah, that's just
Yeah.
to get us to a place where we can convert over to the accrual method, so.
Just a guess, but
Yep, that's right. Okay, job descriptions. Yeah, one of the things I'm really proud of, and I would challenge anybody to find every job description for every employee in any other township. In any other township, we have every single one of our job descriptions is published right now on our website, colerain.org, in our transparency portal, because transparency is very important to us. So all those job descriptions are updated and available right now on our website. Were those changes in status approved by the board? All changes in status, I believe, have to be approved by the board per the policy book. When the township changes the duties of an employee, is there a change of status reclassification in the employment file? If the person is changing their job, then yep, I would imagine there would be a change of status in the employment file. Where would I find those changed job descriptions? On our website at colerain.org. Then we talk about Nancy's son, Jake. What position does the employee hold? I think that Chief Denny answered that question. Why did Mr. Mills not tell the board at the recent CIC meeting that applications received? The board did not ask, and it was the first meeting since February, and so I didn't know that was something that that any of you could ask.
We
me
were
for
kind
whatever
of
you
shut
want.
down with all that for several months because of the COVID.
That's right. And I didn't send those applications to Mr. Wallert. He got them from someplace else. If the board ever wants anything, just ask, and I'm happy to provide that to you.
it was my feeling at the time that with a 1-hour truncated meeting that we really wouldn't get to them anyway, because we had, especially after I had the PowerPoint and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yep.
It's.
Sure. And the
So
board,
you did not, that's, I know at that meeting, I was concerned that, hey, why didn't I get them? But apparently you didn't send them to anybody.
Correct.
Okay, because I was sitting here, and I know we haven't, since we don't talk outside of meetings, we haven't had a chance to discuss it, but what happened was they came through some other channel.
I assume so. Yes.
Yeah, somebody sent me the applications because the question was to me via email from a citizen, hey, have you read through the applications yet? And I'm like, no, I haven't even requested them yet. Or something to that extent was my response, because I knew with the 1 hour I didn't think we'd get it. And the citizen responded, well, here they are. And I said, well, okay, fine, I'll take them. That saves me the trouble for asking them. So I guess, if there's a breakdown in communication or something, I'll take the blame on that. I knew that we wouldn't get to it, because I think that's a 30-minute discussion in and of itself, who's going to fill, if we're going to have additional spots, and who's going to fill those spots.
Yeah. I've noticed that there are certain individuals that just like to create chaos and mistrust, and I hope that doesn't occur. If there's ever anything that you need, you just let me know. Again, I would challenge anybody to take a look at what we publish in our CIC. We publish every single transaction. Every single transaction gets published, and I bet you'd be hard-pressed to find another organization, a CIC, that does that. I'd guess one of the most
Well,
transparent.
and with respect to this, you're only answering questions that were asked, and so we don't get into a CIC discussion. I think that you should probably move on, because because there's some members of the CIC that are not here, and it's not a declared CIC meeting, so you're only answering a question that was asked during citizen comments.
Great. And then what is the status of the FAC? The FAC is on hold. The person who submitted this comment has sued us about the way that we handle citizen boards. The Board of Trustees in early 2018, it was very important to the board to reach out to residents to get their input. And so the board established the Financial Advisory Committee and the Land Use Advisory Committee, and subsequent to the establishment of those two boards, Ms. Moore and Ms. Wright sued us and said that they are violations of the Open Meeting Act. In my opinion, that is not accurate, but we have since stopped those citizen outreach efforts as a result of that lawsuit.
Until things get resolved.
Until things get resolved. Yep. And the Northgate Mall contract, Chief Denny, has that expired at this point? I don't know off the top of my head.
Should be expired.
It expires in October.
It expires in October. Very good. So the Northgate Mall contract expires in October.
Mr. Mills?
Yes.
My other question occurred to me is so in my trips through all the other township websites, which I think I've shared with you privately, that it's amazing how much stuff we publish. I almost feel like it's so much, it's too much, but especially people our size, big townships don't even come close. But one thing I'd like to see, and I don't know if this is something we've thought about, is that limited home rule resolutions, they're still active. What a lot of the bigger urban limited home rule townships do is they actually have a section, because it is kind of, if you're looking for a resolution in Colerain that's on the website, you kind of have to go to the year, and you have to, at least I had to kind of guess, and what time of year was that passed. Is there a possibility of doing something like that? I don't think we have that many on the books to begin with.
Wait, say it again. What is the request?
So resolutions that are limited home rule resolutions that mean that they come with with some kind of penalty or something. So, for instance, Boardman has a massage parlor set of rules. That's one of their limited home rule resolutions. What I'm going to be talking about later tonight is a limited home rule resolution. They put those separately.
Oh, okay.
So that you can just click on the resolution. Otherwise, and there might be a better way, because I'm not real good at reconnoitering computers with that. Otherwise, I have to go to the year.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, was it Resolution 5, 2016?
Sure.
But I don't imagine we have a whole lot of them that we could just have a separate section that says home rule resolutions. Essentially, what these are laws that we have here in Colerain, or things with the force of law that are different from maybe the ORC. So that would be helpful, I think, for citizens who are like, okay, what's different about you? What's different than what's listed on the ORC?
Yep.
Okay.
No, I think I understand what you're saying, and all of our, as you mentioned, all of our resolutions are available on our website, as you can see up on the board here, and they are, as you said, listed by year. So,
Yeah.
And you're saying, like, don't put in the appropriations resolution or the all the sort of housekeeping stuff, just the ones that establish different rules.
Or just a separate category down there that says limited home rule resolutions.
Okay.
And then we could still have them in both places, because they're probably just pull downs. And like I said, there's probably not that many.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I'd be happy to go through and take a look at that. Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did you have anything else with your administrative report?
No, sir.
Moving right along, our next item would be Trustees Report. Matt, Raj, would one of you like to go first?
Matt, you got a lot of things. Go ahead.
Well, after I gave a big, long diatribe on limited home rule resolutions, the veterans event was fantastic. I thought, and also I'd like to also thank the Historical Society, which in addition, so Chris Green set up the event at the end of the month. The Historical Society has a long tradition of being involved with that as well, with recognizing veterans. So with the most recent one, Chris Green took charge of, and it was just a fantastic event. So to both groups and organizations, thank you for everything. I had a chance to meet with pretty lengthy, in fact, probably the whole building heard both of us, because we're kind of on the loud side, Mike Iona about the comprehensive plan, and we had about a 2-hour meeting, and I think everybody else just evacuated the building. But it was a fantastic discussion, and I also had the opportunity to take the FEMA courses, 100 and 700, or 100 and 800. I'm going to go back and maybe take a couple of the others too, just because I know that a lot of the folks take them. They're not your typical online computer modules. Maybe it's the fact that everything's an acronym with it, but I found that to be kind of interesting as well. Other than that, I think we'll be talking about trash later on tonight, which has become a big issue. And I've also talked to Mr. Mills about the snipe sign roundup. We use the term roundup because I'm watching Yellowstone whenever I'm not in a meeting or working anymore. So we'll call it the roundup, and we're going to be taking care of that as well. So thank you very much, and that will be it.
Thank you, Matt. Raj, did you have any comments?
Yeah, I'll say, you want to go ahead? I'll ask.
Sure. It was brought to my attention that back in early this year, when the 2020 board passed the Colerain Township Rules of Procedure and Conduct Board of Trustees Procedures and Rules, which was something we debated over a few meetings, on item 7, presentations, part A, one of the items says no candidates within 90 days of either the primary or general election will be placed on the agenda. And we are within 90 days of an election, and the person who mentioned that to me mentioned that we had somebody on the agenda for that this evening. So just in the future, if somebody turns up on the agenda, we probably need to let the other side speak. If that person wants to speak at one of our meetings, I would say we would let them do that. As far as the comments about our vacant properties and trash accumulating on them, I've had numerous people call me. We had somebody stop up here tonight, and I met him out in the foyer about an issue that I told him I would look at sometime this week over on Palomar. But some of the vacant buildings, the Audi store over on Galbraith Road, and maybe that's one that somebody was referring to, I drove by there and I saw the grass in between the sidewalk and the curb was about 2 feet tall, and I saw the realtor sign for that property, and I took out my cell phone and called the number and spoke to the realtor, and he apologized, and it was cut within 2 days. There was some tires and furniture back in the corner, and that was cleaned up within a few days after that. The Marsh property up at Hamilton and Kemper, there used to be a Marsh supermarket, and around back by the loading dock, where you might not necessarily see it from the street, a bunch of junk and stuff was dumped there, and then they had a donation, big metal container to take donations for one of the charitable groups, and it was overstacked with couches and stuff that had been left out in the rain, and we contacted the owner of that property, and it got cleaned up pretty quick. There's a person that lives over in the subdivision behind Stone Creek, behind the Meyer store, and they had contacted me and said, hey, there's a bunch of stuff dumped behind Myers. And I drove back there and looked on a Saturday afternoon, and I found tires and other things that citizens that don't dispose of stuff properly had dumped back there. And we got that cleaned up pretty quick also. And that's 3 examples of commercial properties where people had dumped stuff, and just by contacting us or contacting me, we managed to get out and get it addressed pretty quick. And the Kroger store down in Mount Airy, I haven't driven by in a while, but if there's stuff down there, it needs to get cleaned up, and we recognize that, and none of the trustees like to see that, but if we do, and you could bring it to our attention and take action, and that's the only way we can take action on it. And so that would be my comment. Is I'm well aware, and I brought that up at every meeting. If you see something and you have trouble getting a hold of us or don't know how to use CSR, call the administrator or call me. My number's 404-3057. I'm happy to go out and look at it, and all we want to do is get these issues resolved, and that's part of the fun of being a trustee. So, Raj, did you have any comments?
I'll make a few comments. Thanks, Dan. Like Matt mentioned, we thank Chris Green, and also the Historical Society, so many years supporting our veterans. They're making all these recognizable events, and we really thank them for that, all these things they do for our veterans. And earlier you heard our Congressman Steve Chabot spoke. It's my initiative. I really want to, I spoke to Mr. Mills about that, the corridor study plan, Colerain. We need to revitalize it and make it happen. It's only things it could happen, bring together ODOT and the federal together. When I mentioned to Tommy Arnold from ODOT, hey, the federal people wants to meet and they were excited. It's a great idea. Maybe bring the county engineer also. We need to sit down, start working on this project, because Colerain Avenue is a gateway to the Colerain Township. We have to make it, the timing is right. We cannot wait for 5 years from now, because the federal government passing the transportation bill, so this is opportunity. We use our representatives to help our community. And they like the idea, which I'll be setting up the meeting very soon, the ODOT and the federal people. So we come up with the corridor study plan to make it a reality. Okay, another thing we talked about, actually, this very important thing, I visited the leadership retreat. That is a great thing. Jeff, you put it up, and all the leaders of the department, very unconventional manner, very easy, and a lot of brainstorming done. You took notes and everything, and that's the most productive things. It happened because you are in a setting like very, very leisurely settings, and you going apart. It didn't cost any money to the township. It's a very beautiful place, very relaxing place, and I sit down and get to watch some of the discussions among our leaders, and I think it's a very beneficial for our township for the future, and also for the writing 2021 strategic planning. During the meeting, I also talked about to Jackie, our public works director. So we have a Colerain Avenue, which is maintained by the ODOT. We have East Miami River Road, and run by the county road, the county engineer. So is many county roads run by the county engineers, and we also have the Colerain Township. So anything happening in the road, and people that the resident doesn't know, they all think it's a Colerain Township responsibilities. But so only way we can do that, and let's put together, not pass on the buck. Oh, it's a county job, let them do it. It's an ODOT job, let them do it. And our residents see it is a Colerain's problem, but it's what we suggested. Bring all these three people on the table, sit down how we can coordinate each other, work together, make our township better. I think Jack thought it was a great idea. It's something we want to do, which I'll be doing that very, very soon, meeting all these people, come up with some kind of cohesive plan, make our township look better. Then third thing, I talked in previous meeting also, the businesses should be accountable. They're dumping on the business. I personally went to talk to that Hobby Lobby, the managers, so many company. They should establish a camera, the camera, and the report the dumping thing to our township enforcement people or police department when this is happening. I don't know, we have a resolution that, something we might put in like a resolution. I think Matt is going to talk about this later on. And we have to come up with some plan where the business also accountable. I think what the residents see on the business parking lot, business place, abandoned property. We are focusing so much on the residence area. At the same time, maybe seasonal, hiring another seasonal enforcement officer, focus on the business. We need to go pound on this business. Hey, you also responsible, maybe assess fine for them if they don't clean up. So something that I would like to sit down, would talk with the zoning and enforcement people, so how we can do that. And maybe we can pass another resolution, similar nature, to avoid this kind of dumping, illegal dumping. Also, it's a lot of places where the Goodwill bin is, Goodwill, people donate, and the bin is so full, the dumpster, whatever, it's not dumpster, I don't want to say, it's people donating all the stuff to the Goodwill, but they lay it on the ground, you look very, very bad. And something that really the next step will move forward, going after this business, make this illegal dumping happening. Okay, this is my report, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak.
You always have an opportunity to speak, Raj. That would conclude the trustees' reports, and that would take us to new business, Mr. Mills.
Yes, sir. We're going to begin our new business in the Public Safety Department, departments, and we have, we'll start off with Chief Cook.
I have two items for you to consideration to this evening. The first one being a motion authorizing the disposal of surplus fleet maintenance equipment. We recommend the adoption of a motion authorizing the disposal of one automotive air conditioning, refrigerant recovery, and recycling machine per the recommendation of the township's fleet manager, Mike Adler. The equipment essentially is unfit for use for which it was acquired and is no longer needed for public use. Specifically, it has unrepairable deficiencies, and parts are unavailable to actually repair the equipment. The equipment will be disposed of by means of GovDeals auction website.
This is item B, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. I would motion, so you need a motion for that. I would motion that we do such a thing.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion?
None.
Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Yes?
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Okay, and the second item is a motion authorizing the installation of a physical access control system. Recommending the adoption of a motion authorizing the installation of a physical access control system. Essentially what that is the identification badge and key card access system that we're currently using in the 5 fire station facilities at a cost of $30,494.42. The installation of the access system provides the means to protect personnel, facilities, and township assets by means of tracking and restricting door entry access to the fire department's facilities. Also interior rooms to areas for authorized personnel only. This project was identified as a 2020 capital improvement project to enhance critical infrastructure security and aligns the fire stations with other township facilities. The materials and installation will be provided by Mobilecom using technology and components compatible with the current system used by the township.
I'll motion to approve the installation of a physical access control system at the locations listed.
I second it.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? I would just add that's the same system that allows me to get into this building. I have a card. It not only, but it can tell Mobilecom or you when I come and go, who, just everything. And if there was ever an incident, you'd be able to go back in time and track whose card lets who into the building and that type of thing. So, is there any other discussion?
I would add that another feature that the system allows us to do is once an employee separates from the township, then it immediately removes that person from the system, and they no longer have access to any of the facilities.
Are you ready for that, Frank?
I am.
So you'll be turning in your card. I hope you come back.
Are you inferring this is done just for Chief Cook here?
Was there any other, did you want to elaborate on that, Mr. Waller? No, but I think it's great, and I think, with everything going on with government buildings and stuff, I think it's critical. And was there any other discussion?
No, I agree with what Mr. Unger says. I think it's important that, we're working these folks all hours of the night. Let's let them have some rest when they're in their house, or some peace and knowing that the thing's locked down.
All right, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Board, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Chief, the next item on the agenda comes from the police department.
Mike?
Next item comes from the police department, and it is item A under public safety. Chief Denny?
Thank you, Board. I've got one item this evening, and that is to recommend adoption of a motion to accept a grant from the Ohio Attorney General in the amount of $47,400 for the Quick Response Team. That's for the operations through June 30th, 2021, and also to permit Administrator Jeff Mills to sign that agreement awarding the funds. This is the police and fire QRT grant that we get annually.
Mr. President, I'll motion to accept the grant from the Ohio Attorney General for Quick Response Team and permit Township Administrator to sign the agreement.
And I will second it. It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion?
It's like I always mention that we have a great QRT program. Lately, we see a lot of substance abuse problems going on, and see how we can, with this type of aid, help, how we can help to reduce this problem. That'd be great.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Raj Kapal. It's not in the news because we hear COVID-19, but all the benchmarks I'm seeing for drug overdoses are really peaking, I think, in the county right now. And, to continue this work is essential.
And thank you, Chief Denny. As you've heard from this board and previous boards, please be out looking for grant dollars. It's one way we can avoid directly passing these costs on to local property owners. So thank you for your work in getting that. You said it's $47,000 or so. I believe that's what the number was. So thank you for the effort to get that grant. And with no other discussion, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Raj Kapal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Board.
Next item.
Next item comes from the Department of Planning and Zoning, and its Director, Mr. Mike Iona.
Good evening, board members. I
Good.
have one item this evening, and that is as follows. It is a nuisance abatement. A nuisance abatement resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement on the following properties: 2473 Clovercrest, 3522 Alamosa, 2830 Country Park, 6500 Dry Ridge, 3402 Niagara, 9008 Orangewood, 8993 Pippin, 3506 Pool, 3410 Redskin, 2458 Roosevelt, 2474 Roosevelt, 2491 Roosevelt, 2673 Tobermory, 2997 Wheatfield, 2459 Wilson, 3260 Ainsworth, 3522 Alamosa, again as a trash abatement. The first was for a grass abatement. 9711 Dunraven, 3217 McGill, and finally 11657 Pippin. And staff is recommending approval of a resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement on the aforementioned properties.
I'll motion to approve the resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement for the properties listed.
I second it.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? Mike, I would like to comment that first one on the list, 2473 Clovercrest. I was contacted about that, and it's right down off of Pippin Road, right before you leave Colerain Township going south. It's one of the last streets down there on the left. I was contacted about that within the last 10 days, and I just want to compliment you on getting down there, getting it inspected. The house is completely overgrown with honeysuckle and other vegetation, and getting it turned around this quick, because it's week and a half later, and you've got it inspected, and we're getting in here to remediate it. So thank you for getting that one done quick. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Raj Kapal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
Thank you, trustees. That's all I have for this evening.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, Mike.
All right. Board, the next item, we have a lot that we're going to accomplish on this agenda, but this next item is in my opinion, one of the most important things that we will do all year. As we've discussed earlier, Chief Cook will be retiring here in a couple of weeks. And the next item on the agenda is a motion to appoint Assistant Chief Alan Walls to the position of Fire Chief and Director of the Department of Fire and Emergency Medical Services. Assistant Chief Walls applied for the position of Chief of the department and was evaluated in an oral board format by a panel of retired fire chiefs from the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. He participated in that before participating in an interview with the Board of Trustees. I sat in on that oral panel and can attest to you that it was one of the most intense grillings that I think I've ever. I mean, it's up there with the stuff that you see on C-SPAN, in front of Congress. I mean, these guys gave him the works, and Mr. Walls performed admirably. His performance during each of these evaluations confirms what we know from experience of over 24 years with Mr. Walls, in which he has worked for the township. He's got the education, the training, and demonstrated leadership ability to be successful as the next chief of the department. Contingent upon the adoption of a motion to promote Mr. Walls, he would assume the role of chief of the department at 12:01 a.m. on Sunday, September 6th, 2020, at an annual salary of $109,012. He would be exempt from FLSA. On a personal note, I know Mr. Walls to be a dedicated public servant to Colerain Township. He is whip smart. He is incredibly hardworking, and he is respected by the officers and rank and file alike. It's a big deal. This transition is a big deal for our organization, and I am very confident that Mr. Walls will lead that very important department in great ways. Recommendations to approve.
Mr. President, I'll motion to appoint Assistant Chief Alan Walls to the position of Fire Chief and Director of the Department of Fire and Emergency Medical Services.
I proudly second the motion.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? I would like to add that I have talked to Assistant Chief Alan Walls a couple times, including last Thursday. We had a nice conversation about things. Besides all the other interrogation that he's been through, we did conduct a complete criminal background and every check imaginable.
Yes.
Just the same as we did with you, Jeff Mills, and he passed all those with flying colors, and I see no reason why he would not make an excellent fire chief.
I'll just add that I wasn't in on the interview with the fire personnel, but when I read the report, it wasn't because when I first heard, he's going to be interviewed by a bunch of other fire chiefs. Well, that's going to be softball. It was tough, man. And in the give and take with the trustees, he did an outstanding job. And I think from very early on, I found Assistant Chief Walls to be the kind of guy that knows how to push back on certain things. When we had our meeting and tours of a couple of the firehouses, he would say no. I think you need to look at it a little different way, and I appreciate that. Because I want the back and forth, and I want to look at things from different perspectives, and I think that he's gonna do us well here in Colerain Township, as he already has, and I think it's they're going to be very difficult shoes to fill from Chief Cook, and I'm confident that if the vote goes positive, that Mr. Mills or Mr. Walls can do that. I almost made you chief.
No, don't do that. You don't want to do that.
Matty,
Go ahead. I'm finished.
yeah, it's you grew up in this township with one of the best in the country, and you work under the leadership Chief Frank Cook, and you got a passion for our department, and excellent credentials, and we're looking forward to build a better township fire department here. Thank you.
And with no other discussion, Mr. Baker, would you please call for a vote?
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Absolutely.
Congratulations,
Congratulations.
incoming
Congratulations.
Chief Walls. Chief, did you Incoming chief, did you have a comment you wanted to make? I discussed that with you prior to the meeting.
I have a few, if I may.
Sure, please. The chair would ask that you approach the microphone and.
Prepare just a few things here. And so, first of all, I want to say your approval, that being the board and the confidence of all of you, and Chief Cook as well, comes with it a great sense of humbleness. And so, following in the shoes of what I would consider to be fire service giants, that being Chief Snyder and Chief Smith, who are in the Fire Service Hall of Fame, and Chief Cook, who should and one day will be in the Fire Service Hall of Fame, really is an honor. And so, leading an organization that stood for nothing less than excellence is something many, many years ago I couldn't have ever imagined. And so, Chief Cook, and I think we already know that, has overseen countless improvements here in the organization as the chief the last 5.7 years. And he served as a great role model, mentor, and a great friend to many of us here in the last 36 years of his service to the township. And you hit the nail on the head when you said those shoes will be difficult at best to fill, and they truly will. And so, that sense of humbleness and pride and honor that I feel filling those shoes is really, it's almost overwhelming, I guess is the best way to put it. Speaking organizationally, though, we face countless challenges, as well as we've experienced some of the darkest times an organization could ever face. But we've always come out the other end better for it. And I think that that's the truest definition of what continuous improvement and not relying on past practices is all about. And so looking in retrospect, though, none of that would be possible without the support of those in the township, those that have served in the administration and the board, and those that work in the organization and who I will serve. And so looking to the future, and in order to maintain a high level of performance, our values organizationally will drive what we do, and our focus will be on our mission. And we'll measure that then by achieving nothing less than excellence, and therefore the respect that we earn as an organization, be it locally or regionally or nationally, as a fire and emergency medical services, will be the measure of all of that. So then you might ask, what could you expect from me? And I would say the following. I'm a person that will do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, I'll value others above myself, not looking to my own interests, but to each of the interests of the others. You can find that in Philippians 2, verse 3 and 4. And so I look forward to being a humble servant and earning the trust and respect that's required of being the fire chief of such a prestigious organization and following in the shoes of Chief Cook. Thank you.
Well, thank you and congratulations. It's great to start out at the bottom and make your way to the top.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Chief Cook, for putting together an outstanding chain of, what do I want to say, chain of succession.
Events that led to incoming Chief Walls.
Yeah, chain of succession, yeah.
I can say unequivocally that my success is a result of Chief Smith and Chief Cook's mentorship and tutelage.
And thank you for your future of making yourself available to the citizens through Coffee with the Chiefs. So, congratulations to you. Next item.
Very good. Thank you, Chief. Okay, the next item is a motion authorizing vacation time adjustment for non-contract employees. And by non-contract employees, what is meant there is employees that are not covered by a collective bargaining agreement. The Board of Trustees has already adopted additional vacation dump for several employees at the July 14th, 2020 meeting. After a review, it was discovered that there was an error in the spreadsheet. It shortchanged 4 employees. This motion would correct that error and be in addition to the amount approved at the July 14th, 2020 meeting for those employees. Recommendation is to adopt the motion.
I'll move to authorize vacation time adjustment for non-contract employees as provided.
I will second it. It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion?
None.
No?
Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Thank you, Board. The next item is a resolution amending the organizational chart and job roster. This motion will create a new support services sergeant position in the police department. The position is being paid for by the Northwest Local School District. There would be no increase in staffing as a result of this addition. The existing district safety officer that was in the agreement with the district prior to the newly approved agreement was changed to a supervisory position. So the recommendation is to adopt a resolution amending the org chart and position roster to create this new support services sergeant.
I would motion that we do such a thing.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? I think it's great to have our police department in our schools. It can really teach young people the value of local law enforcement and get them acquainted with police. And it's also a great place to get information about what young people are thinking, and I'm all for it. So, any other discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Chabot?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
And Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Thank you, Board. Next item on the agenda is, yes, the resolution amending the property maintenance resolution, and that is presented by Mr. Wallert.
All right, so I can take it from?
Sure.
Okay, so I talked to Mr. Mills about this a little bit. This is obviously, I think, kind of a working resolution. This is what we used in North College Hill to deal with some of the same issues. Now, obviously, there's a township versus city thing, but we do have limited home rule. The state of Ohio, does provide for enforcement of littering and does provide for penalty. And in Colerain Property Maintenance Code, the owners need to comply with the requirements. There's a section that deals with garbage, and there's another section that permits citations for violations of township resolutions, and another section 50406, 50408 that provides for enforcement of a resolution, and even section B allows us to put a lien on this. Now, part of my discussion with Mr. Mills is this, his point is, what is your outcome desired? Is this something that's property maintenance, or is it a nuisance property? And I guess that's part of the wordsmithing of this, because my original point was, and I don't know if this applies at all, is that, well, can't we pass a resolution that has a penalty for just the health and the health and order of the township? Now, if that's not the case, maybe we need to do some work on this. But what I see is, and I'll disagree a little bit with some things that were said earlier when we said that, hey, we get on it right away when it's called. I don't want that. I want the commercial property owners to, they're there. They go out in the back dumpster and see the tires piled up. I remember growing up as a kid, my parents would put clean clothes and stuff on the steps. I'd supposed to take them up when I went upstairs, and I would pass by it every time. And their point to me, which kind of drove home with this, was, why are you walking past it every time? Do something about it. Grab it the first time. I think that what we create here is a situation where people are playing games with the notice of violation, where they get 7 or 10 or how many ever days. Then they have an opportunity to fix it, and then it's garbage again, and we have to live for it for 7 to 10 days. I feel like we put Mr. Iona, Mr. Mills, Mr. Weckback, and all the property maintenance code enforcement people in a bad position, because we've got citizens saying, hey, how come you can't fix that? Especially now that we're going to beats, people will be able to point to an employee and say, that Walgreens is on your beat, how come it's not fixed? And part of it is that there's what's a loophole in the way that this is written. And it's interesting because I mentioned before, I went to all the probably 40 different township websites. Most don't even deal with trash. It's not even part of the property maintenance code. There are a couple that do. Actually, Columbia Township has a situation where they say that they don't even need to give you a courtesy notice on the first violation. They just might fine you right away. So I guess my effort on this is getting the discussion started. I don't want the perfect, because this is not perfect by all means, to become an enemy of progress. Because when I see this trash here and some of the reactions I've gotten more calls about trash in the last 3 or 4 weeks from a wider variety of citizens from different areas. It brings about anger. It brings about fear that somehow the township is losing status, it's losing progress, it's becoming a dumping ground. And I think our job as trustees, and the job of administration and the job of everybody in the township is to take that anger and fear and to bring hope and faith and optimism and loyalty, because ultimately those characteristics I think will go farther in solving these issues. So for those reasons, I've provided this. Sorry for the long introduction. I know how Mr. Unger loves my soapbox speeches. You know, it is what it is. If you take it and you take every word out and replace it, I don't care. What I want to do is I want to get this started so that I'm not looking at pictures of dumped tires and mattresses and things like that. I want this just as much as anyone else in the township. I want this under control because it speaks volumes about the township. And I think once we get positive momentum going on this, we'll begin to address these issues. I mean, it's hard to try to tell businesses to come in here when, you know, you look at and you see a big stack of mattresses or something. It's very difficult. So for that reason, I'm introducing this, and then I guess I would assume there's going to be a lot of discussion, and we probably won't pass it today or even vote on it today, but that's my motivation.
Are you introducing it with the intent of discussing it, or with the?
Well, so I'm going to motion to pass the amendment as provided and wait for a second in order to begin to get discussion to move it forward.
Yeah, Matt, in essence, you want to introduce this resolution, give the trustees an opportunity to expand the existing, what are the code we have, and the zoning code and the violation.
Did you want to second it, Raj?
Yeah. Or you want?
No, I don't want to second it. Did you want to second it before we start discussing it? Or if you don't, then that's fine.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, and that gets it to the floor for discussion.
Okay. So Matt got a great idea. You know, it's like even I mentioned about my last trustee report. I'm going out of the business also liable for it. Like I said, previous meetings, Hobby Lobby backstore, they got about 60 tires. They didn't do nothing. You know, people live in a Northbrook area, the initiative. Then I contacted Rumkey. They sent the truck, picked it up. It's many situations like that. Now it's spreading. So we got to come up with a plan. We got to come up with a resolution, which we can enforce seriously. So what I was thinking, we will have a work session. The resolution gives an opportunity to lead to work sessions, discuss with the administrators, the department heads of the zoning, perhaps the public works. We all sit together, develop a plan. How are you going to enforce it? Is that, Matt, that's what you're expecting?
Yeah, I kind of sprung this on Mr. Iona, Mr. Mills, Mr. Weckback, just because I wanted to get some kind of unvarnished reaction first and then go to work on it. But essentially what this does is it's a 3-strike rule. You know, if there's trash on your property the first time, you'll get the notice of violation in the necessary amount of time in order to address it. The second time, you get the notice of violation time to address it. Time 3, boom, you're paying a fine because we've now been back there now. Now, it may be different trash per se, but it's still the same issue. But I think that a work session will allow Mr. Mills, legal, Mr. Iona, and Mr. Iona can get feedback from his department as well, to put this into a workable situation. I'm not spending taxpayer dollars going over there and given 7-day warning after 7-day warning after 7-day warning. It's unfair. It's simply, part of the cost of doing business for these businesses, and I support them coming here, and I'll do whatever I can to help them. But part of the doing business is keeping their area clean.
Right, right. So in the other words, you want to give like a progressive discipline?
Not even progressive, but to say, look, we're not going to come back here 40 times in a year with different complaints. Once we get past 2, you're going to start getting fined if we can do that. Now, Mr. Mills has indicated there's some problems with that, so maybe it needs to be in a different form. But I think that gets back to your original point of it being more of a work session, so we could have all of the administration and legal and trustees and everybody kind of figuring out what the best angle is, if that's in fact kind of the direction that you and Mr. Unger would want to go with it. I'm indicating that's the direction I want. I'm not, in the classroom when I've told a student two or three times to do something, I don't give them a warning anymore, because then the warning becomes ineffective. It's not a deterrent, because they know that warning 6 is going to turn into warning 7, which will turn into warning 8.
Right, right. So we have a situation like the violation of residential, of zoning violation of residential. We give them a letter, right? We send them a letter. Then if they don't respond, we cite them to the court, housing court.
So there's 2 different tracks. One track is the track that ends with us going onto the property and abating the nuisance, which means if it's grass, we cut it. If it's trash, we take it. That process is governed not by any local resolution, but by the Ohio Revised Code. And I believe it's 505.87. And the Ohio Revised Code has a very specific process that we have to follow. Because what you're doing is you're going on to it's the government going on to private property and taking something from them, right? So, and then we're assessing it onto their taxes, which means that they could lose their house if they don't pay it. So there's this, if you think about it in that way, there's good reason why there's this cumbersome process. But that process that is the nuisance abatement process, it's actually a 2-strike rule. After the first time, within a year, we don't have to do the 7 days again, and we don't. After the first time, we don't have to sticker it. It just goes onto the trustees' resolution, and then we abate it. You guys declared a nuisance again, and we abate it again. So with the abatement, it's a 2-strike rule. That's the one that ends in abatement and assessment. Now, what we're talking about here, I believe,
it's a business.
is the property maintenance resolution. So the property maintenance resolution is the one that doesn't end in us abating the nuisance. It ends in us taking them to court and trying to get the property owner to abate the nuisance themselves. That process necessarily ends in housing court. And you can see we take lots, and Mr. Iona just mentioned today how many people we take to housing court all the time. We do that frequently, but that's such a long process, right? It's so frustrating for everybody involved to sit and wait for the docket and then wait for the person not to show up, and then over and over and over again, it takes months, years to get any action. I totally get the frustration. I think what your charge is hey, Jeff and team and trustees and law director, come up with a way to do this faster, and we can look for opportunities. We can see what other people are doing, but those are the 2 tracks that we're on, right? And the 2 laws that we're dealing with. And I would recommend not adopting the language that's in this resolution tonight, because I believe that I think that it's at odds with the Ohio Revised Code. So you do that.
Let me understand you. Your recommendation is not adopting the resolution. Let's go for the work session I mentioned about.
Yes.
Then we'll come back, address the situation.
Yes. Yeah, and as with all issues, one of the ways that I suggest, and I suggested this to Mr. Waller, I suggest to all, if there is a problem that you guys want solved, make a motion, say, I move that the administration and departments bring us 3 alternatives to solve this problem. And then we can go and do all the research and come back and say, hey, these are the things that we came up with. That way, we aren't in a situation where we have a resolution that the law director hasn't vetted, and that might get us into trouble if we adopt. Because right now we're 2 votes away from getting into some trouble. So so don't adopt this tonight. Give us an opportunity to figure out how to solve this problem in a way that comports with the Higher Best Code.
So you will very soon maybe set up with a work session for that, you know?
We can
We'll
do
set
that.
up and invite law director and also all the department head involved in this.
Sure.
Okay.
We can do it like that too. Yep.
That's,
Well,
go ahead.
Okay,
Dan.
so I'm looking at this, and thanks for putting it together. It obviously is an item for discussion. Referring back to the rules of procedure and conduct that the board passed on a 2-to-1 vote back in February or March, it says each resolution that is on the agenda shall be read by title only or read in full if required. Each resolution shall be read on 2 separate days. Then the board may, by a majority vote of its members, authorize the adoption of a resolution upon its first reading. I would think we would at least need to read this at 2 separate meetings.
Absolutely.
And that said, I'm going to ask that my fellow trustees vote no on it, and I do have a question on this section 1. It says the township desires to protect citizens and maintain a clean appearance at commercial properties. Now therefore be it resolved by Colerain Township as follows. Section 1, and I guess if there's a version of this that's redlined, but that's not the version I have, it says the owner, occupant, or person having charge or management of any lot or parcel of land situated within the township, whether the same be improved or unimproved, vacant or occupied, within 7 days written notice to the last known address, served personally upon the owner, occupant, or person having charge of the property involved, or by posting a copy thereof in a conspicuous place on the property involved by the township administrator or his or her designee. On a third subsequent violation in the same 12-month period of the initial notice as specified herein, the property may be subject to immediate abatement by the township as provided in this section without further notification. That's a lot of words. I don't know, does that replace the existing section 1? It's not redlined or anything, so I don't really understand it, and just based on that, I would be a no vote on it. And then typically, most of our resolutions have a line on the bottom that says it's been reviewed and prepared by our law director, and I don't see that on here either. And so for those reasons, and for the fact that we really need to present it more than once based on the rules that this board adopted earlier in the year, I would ask for a no vote on this from my fellow trustees, just so we have time to make sure that it's legal and that it's not a duplication of rules that we already have. So that's my opinion on it. Was there any other discussion?
None.
Yeah, just to respond to that, to be clear, I said in the beginning, this was an effort to get the ball rolling, and
Right.
you know, and I didn't really anticipate it being passed, and it does have the 2 reading rule. You're absolutely correct.
And I think whatever is finally come up with, I obviously think that we should have our law director
Yeah, that was
review it.
provided to him.
Okay.
I just haven't heard back.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's not on this one that's up for
Right.
passage.
Right, it's
So-
not, because I haven't heard back.
Yeah, it was usually, yeah.
Yeah, I just sent it at the end of last week, but again, with the understanding of it, it's gonna need two readings. I mean, whether the law director, if it were perfect in its form, which it's not, whether the law director gave a legal opinion on it now versus a week from now, it still needed the 2 readings.
Okay, that's fine. I don't have any other comments. Is there any other comments?
So I'm gonna withdraw my motion to approve the amended Colerain Township Property Maintenance Code with regard to littering and deposit of garbage, rubbish, junk, et cetera. And that way we can bring it back up the next.
So we need to, you want a motion, I think you want a motion to table.
Okay, we can motion to table, okay.
There was a motion early already.
Yeah, to discuss it, we took it to the floor.
Right, but I brought that motion, so I'm just withdrawing that motion. I think that's, but if you want to table, that's fine. Whatever we need to do to,
Okay, so maybe if you tabled it to a work session that is yet to be determined. I know that our next meeting is August 25th, but before that meeting, you've identified a CIC meeting, and so that period of time is not available. If you wanted to push it into September, the first meeting in September, we could do an hour before the first meeting in September, or if you wanted to set up another time, whatever you wanted to do.
Mr. Mills, I think this is significant enough that maybe we move the CIC and do this August 25th. This has become, for me, a major, I mean, it's the source of probably more complaints than any.
Okay.
It is true. It is true. It's getting visible too. It's more visible, make our township look bad, which is priority. We got to work on that. Like I said earlier, the business simply don't care. Some other business don't care. So we got to act on it. Okay. We will set up a work session whenever. Let us know.
Well, you tell me, whatever your pleasure is.
Well, so we need to, I guess that's part of the continuing discussion.
Okay, so I'll motion to table the resolution and schedule a work session for August 25th at 6 p.m. and reschedule the CIC for that date.
Or cancel the CIC and
reschedule for September, yeah.
So there's a motion on the floor to table this.
Okay.
Needs a second.
Needs a second.
I second it.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? I would just say, make sure it's got legal review and it says on the document presented that it's been reviewed by our law director. Is there any other discussion on tabling it?
Nope.
Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote on the motion to table.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you, Board. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda. Earlier on this evening, you all amended the organizational chart and job roster to include a support services sergeant. On the consent agenda this evening is the promotion of Officer Dorfline to that role. Officer Dorfline has participated in a competitive process and scored first. If approved, his salary would be $77,808.28. He would serve a one-year probationary period commencing August 12th, 2020. Recommendation is to approve all the consent agenda items.
I motion that we approve the consent agenda items.
I will second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion?
None.
Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Congratulations, Sergeant Dorfline.
Congratulations. The next item is the fiscal office report. Fiscal Officer Baker.
Thank you, Board. Brief report tonight. First, we received a notification of a liquor control license for Cincy Seafood. I have spoken to Chief Denny and Mr. Iona, and there is no reason to request a hearing, so we will be sending this off, letting the Liquor Board know that we have no objection to that. Secondly, brief update on public records request. We've now fulfilled, since April 1st, 146. There are 30-some records requests that are still open, so we're working very diligently to get caught up on those. And that's all I have for this evening.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Next item, executive session.
Yes, sir. I recommend that the board go into executive session in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G1, to discuss the employment and compensation of public employees. Also in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G3, to discuss pending or imminent litigation with the township attorney. Also in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G4, to discuss collective bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation. Also in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G8, to discuss confidential information related to specific business strategy, and to discuss negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting a request for economic development assistance.
Sounds like you have a pretty light agenda.
Yeah.
I will motion for all that stuff.
And I will second for the items that you've read. It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
All right.
The board will go into executive session. It is 9:14 PM. And so we will dismiss to executive session, and we will be back to close the meeting. I'd like to call this meeting of the Colerain Township Board of Trustees back to order. It is 9:50 PM on Tuesday, August 11th. Mr. Baker, would you please call the attendance roll?
Mr. Rajagopal?
Here.
Mr. Unger?
Here.
Mr. Waller?
Here.
Mr. Mills, is there anything to report from executive session?
No, sir.
All right, and then our next item would be adjournment. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
A second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion?
None.
Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
All right.
This meeting of the Colerain Township Board of Trustees is adjourned at 9:51 PM on Tuesday, August 11th, 2020.